What happens when a neighbor you trust turns out to be hiding secrets that could cost you everything? Watch as a series of shocking events unfold, revealing a twisted tale of betrayal, danger, and the terrifying truth lurking right next door. 3 years ago, my partner and I moved into our first home. It was simple, but our neighbors were fantastic, and everything seemed perfect. So perfect, in fact, that 18 months later, when they decided to sell their house, a bigger one with luxuries like a driveway, garage, and bathtub, we jumped at the opportunity. We bought it and put our smaller house up for sale next door. After reading a few motivation letters from potential buyers, we chose a Polish couple. They spoke only English to us, which was different since we spoke Dutch, but we didn't think much of it. We exchanged a few friendly words, and everything seemed normal at first. However, things began to feel off. We started hearing strange disturbances at odd hours, loud banging or music blaring through the walls in the middle of the night. It wasn't constant, but it was unsettling enough to make us question who was living so close. The first alarm bell rang when the neighbor came home with severe damage to both sides of his car. It looked like it had scraped against a guardrail at high speed on both sides. When we asked what had happened, he gave a clumsy excuse, but we chose to believe him. The next odd occurrence was when he called us in a panic, claiming that people were tampering with the security cameras outside his house. We rushed over, only to find 2 men trying to break in. We called the police, but by the time they arrived, the burglars were gone. Later, when we reviewed the doorbell footage, we saw the burglars talking in Polish about which house to target. A week later, I was at a housewarming party when my partner texted me about the loud music next door again. A few minutes later, he called, his voice full of terror. The neighbor's car had just sped through our front yard and crashed into his own front door. 2 men were unloading high-end electronics from the car. The police arrived much quicker this time and arrested the men. When asked for ID, the men claimed to be my neighbor, using his actual name. But there was a catch. My neighbor had never spoken Dutch, and these men spoke fluent Dutch with a thick Polish accent. After a brief pursuit, the police arrested them, and they discovered a third suspect in the house. As the police spoke to us about the damage to our property, the doorbell rang. It was our neighbor, looking unrecognizable, bloodied, swollen, and broken, refusing to file a report. Later, he returned to confess that he had cheated on his wife and that she had sent people after him. He begged to stay with us, but we refused. We dropped him off at the hospital, telling him we would stay elsewhere. We didn't, though. We stayed home, locked all the doors, and tried to breathe. Around 1 a.m., our dog began growling, a sound he only makes when someone is at the door. We checked the doorbell camera, and there he was, standing on our porch, ringing the bell repeatedly. He then hid behind our cars as a car drove down the street. His wife stepped out and immediately began sobbing when she saw him. They got into the car and drove away, disappearing for 3 days. The wife eventually returned alone, saying she didn't think she would ever see him again. This began back in 2017, when we moved into a new house in Montreal, Canada. At first, everything seemed great until the strange occurrences started. One night, I heard shuffling outside my window, and I saw something move in the reflection of the mirror. It felt eerie, but my parents assured me it was nothing. Over time, the disturbances became more frequent, but I kept brushing it off as my imagination. That is, until one night during a windstorm, my dad spotted a man standing motionless outside my window. My dad chased him off, and the man jumped a fence, disappearing into the neighboring yards. After this incident, my parents became more concerned and called the police. In the following days, my dad insisted on checking behind my bookshelf, and that's when we discovered a hidden room behind it. There were food wrappers, a switchblade, and even an apple that had been eaten. Someone had been living in our house without us knowing. The police believe the intruder escaped during the investigation, but what truly haunted me was a tiny hole in the wall that allowed someone to spy on me. They knew everything about me, my life, my habits, everything. To this day, I can't forget the terror of knowing that someone had been there all along, watching me. It was a chilling realization.